kind of like graduation type speeches, and he's talking about kind of a magazine, and he's trying to sort of describe a magazine to them. And this magazine, which is like a kind of like a floppy kind of large format, thin kind of sort of book.
Kind of like a tablet, but you can't swipe on it.
Yeah, a book. And our book is this thing made of paper with writing all over it, and it's just kind of sort of digging deeper into kind of trying to explain kind of all this old technology.
Old tech.
It's frightening, isn't it? The seeing kids there like having tantrums and just kind of swiping the hands because they want to be on the phone and they're not allowed, or kind of looking at a magazine and trying to make the pictures move, or tapping the screen to make it play the videos. Or it's worrying.
I mean, crikey, the advances in tech over the last 30, 40 years. It's just crazy, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we're privileged to be part of on this end of it, I think.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was talking to someone the other day about the kind of my formative years. My dad was a music producer, so he had an Atari ST was his, his kind of his music machine. It was absolutely top of the line. He'd had it upgraded to 2.2 megabytes of RAM. And it was, that thing was storming. Like no hard storage on it whatsoever. Everything's on floppy disks. And I'm like, hang on, I've got, a machine that I can upgrade to 64 gigabytes of RAM if I, like so wish to pay the extra 70 quid or whatever it is to, just
mind blowing.
That
it
pace
is
of just 35 years of that time scale. It's nuts.
Yeah, these things just we could be doing this whole thing on one of these easily. Pretty extraordinary.
You think of the size of the tech here that phone has replaced. The film camera, the VHS recorder.
Yes.
Display unit, the computer, the storage, the music player.
Mm-hmm.
And then the communication and it's
navigation.
Yeah.
And if you've got a phone with all the kind of the bells and whistles in terms of sensors, magnetometers and gyroscopes and the like,
spirit levels, all kinds. Quite extraordinary.
And then if you've got a fancy thing like Jamie's got with infrared camera built in.
Or you get one of those, which is the Wallerbot, which just sticks on the back of your phone, and it's got an array of radar scanners, so you can see into walls and things like a super fancy stud detector.
Amazing.
Instead of just the normal beep, you can see what it is, whether it's a pipe or a cable or whatever.
I've never ever used one of those things that either didn't tell you the whole wall was live or there was nothing there at all. It's like.
I tell you, for 100 odd quid, that thing's fantastic.
Yeah.
It plugs into your phone. They do a wireless one now.
Yeah.
But it plugs into your phone, and then it'll show you. It gives you like live tracking. So it'll decide whether it's a pipe or a cable or a stud. Okay. And then it shows it on your phone screen, so as to whereabouts it is. So I was skeptical until I bought one.
Do you need to do a video about that?
Yeah, fortunately their marketing's convincing enough to get me to buy one. So
okay,
they've already got some good stuff out there.
I saw something earlier. It was a wireless colorimeter, not colorimeter, colorimeter.
Colorimeter, yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually kind of just pop it onto you want to know, that shade of purple on that paint. And it's just like, just pop it on your phone. It'll tell you the Pantone codes for that paint.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So,
back in the day, we used to have those to attach to calibrate your screen. Doing photographic work for.
I've got one. I don't use it enough. I'm not good enough for it at the moment.
if you pay enough for the screen, they tend to come calibrated these days automatically for you. So
Yeah.
I think James from Molten Make, I think, has got one that self-calibrates.
Yeah.
Which is, it's got like a pop-out thing that something or other.
Ooh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pretty slick. Pretty slick.
Yeah, it's a fancy one.
Just make a note. Yeah, we've done our mention of James. Yeah.
I was going to say we've got to get it out. Get it out early, seeing as he was upset last week. So. Sure,
he was on the show
before the end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Peter, you've got back into the film photography, I believe.
Well, courtesy of James, yeah, I did have. In fact, it ended up being faulty. I bought a Polaroid SX70. We should talk a little bit about Maker Central. I know you very generously had me on with a few other folks to chat about the post-show come down. And we were sat in the bar on the Sunday night, I think, wasn't it? And James had what I had to ask. Is that an SX70? And it's that sort of very specific. Sorry, excuse me, leaning away from you for a second. Very specific shade of tan leather.
Yeah.
Which is remarkably similar, I have to say, to my iPhone cases. So, yeah. But yeah, I had to have one of these. I never had one back in the day. I used to be a professional photographer, and when I was at college, these were all the rage. Because these are incredibly sophisticated single lens reflex cameras.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one I originally purchased turned out to be not functioning as I expected. I returned it. It turned out the guy I bought it from, I didn't realize when I made the purchase, is only 20 minutes down the road from me. So very, very kindly, he said, "Oh, you can pop it round. I've got another one for you. We'll take it back." And needless to say, it worked perfectly when I returned it. Whatever. But anyway, we got this other one. In the meantime, of course, I burned through 4 packs of film trying to get the thing to work. Anyway, I still haven't tried this one yet, so I'm sure it's fun. But no, it was an interesting chap. He was a French guy, and he was an ex-photographer as well. And he'd gone on to doing other things like me. And I was actually trying to explain the concept of Patreon or member platforms to him. And he said, "Well, you get that. You tell people you're a YouTuber, and you get that. Well, how do you make any money out of that then?" And well, there's adverts that you get a share of the revenue, and there's things like Patreon. Oh, what? Yeah, I sort of heard of that. What's that? Well, you get people who like what you produce, and they send you money every month. And he had that look.
Like, why? Why would they do that?
Why would people do that? Yeah.
Why would they do that? Yeah, that was it exactly. He just and I understand it. I absolutely understand it. But yeah, it's that sort of baffled. It's like that Monty Python sketch where the merchant banker can't get over the concept of kindness, and it's a remarkable thing that people do, and I am extremely grateful for it. But
as are we. It's
definitely
helps us to do it. I mean, and for you, it's now your, I'm guessing, probably the mainstay of your earnings.
The earnings, I mean, always think of earnings like wheels on the wagon. You have as many as possible. So if one of them falls off, you can keep rolling along. And for me, there are basically four wheels on the wagon. I don't really do sponsored brand deals anymore. I've done one, and that was kind of enough. I've just quoted for another one. I don't see that one flying, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, basically it's YouTube AdSense. The ads that everybody skips past generates it's actually 55-45 split in the creator's favor, which is fair.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. There's my own products, there's Patreon or member platforms, and there's affiliate income. Sort of, obviously, Amazon is the big one of that. But I've forged relationships with other companies whose products I enjoy, and I'm very happy to promote those for a small percentage. Yeah.
Fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, yes, the membership side of things, I've moved away from Patreon. I've moved into my own, started rolling my own, as it were, about almost a year ago, and that's working out very well. And it's bigger than the YouTube income now. Yeah.
Fantastic. I suppose it's a double-edged sword, I would imagine, isn't it? If someone's already on Patreon and supporting other creators, it's easy to just throw in the extra to another creator.
Yeah.
But I suppose that the other side of that sword is that when someone's cutting down other spends, they're more likely to cut down on the Patreon spending than another separate.
Yeah, Patreon's fantastic. It's the original membership platform, and the brand in itself. Sorry, I've got a fly buzzing. Exactly. But once you realize, there's many issues with it, depending on what you want to do with it. And if you just want a platform where people can pay you a little bit of money and you can put out a post to your patrons regularly, whether it's an after show or whatever other exclusive content, then that works very well. But it is so US centric, it's painful. There are no currencies in the world other than US dollars and euros. There are no methods of payment other than PayPal. If you're not based in the US, like we are based in the UK, it's a very expensive platform to operate on. By the time you take Patreon fees, platform fees, payment processing fees, the PayPal fees, all that added together works out, in my case, was sort of 22 to 24% roughly of everything that was contributed was getting swallowed up in fees in one way or another, and that was a decent chunk of change. So a year or so ago, I as an experiment, I thought I'd try and see if I can spend that money better. So I started my own member platform, and it's working out okay. The other thing with Patreon, of course, is, and it took me a while to realize this, is that you're helping dig their moat for them, because the more people you have on the platform, the less likely you are to move somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the penny drops, man. Yeah, that's a really clever business strategy, but I don't want to be part of that, because again, there are, as we'll probably discuss in my list of topics later on, one of the niggles with anything like this is that you don't really have your own business. You have a little part of somebody else's business, whether you're operating on YouTube, whether you're operating on Patreon. And changes that they make on their platform can really affect what you do and your income. For example, you can't do any kind of giveaway on Patreon because it contravenes gaming laws in Arkansas or somewhere. I don't know. I don't care. Somewhere where I'm not. And I understand why they've done a blanket ban on that, because trying to manage the minutiae of various gaming laws in all the parts of the world would be almost impossible. But it still rankles. You think, well, what's that to do with me, kind of thing. So there was that. There's other things too.
It's only relatively recent that they brought out things like VAT for anyone that needs to do VAT.
The standing fees are very high. So I went to I was invited way back 2018 or thereabouts to a Patreon UK meetup. Oh wow, that sounds great. I wonder who I'll meet there. Wow, how big is it? It was in a room above a pub, just off Old Street roundabout, you know that? And there were 9 people there. 2 of them worked for flipping Patreon. Yeah. So anyway,
both creators from the UK there.
Exactly. Yeah. The one little pro tip that I took away from that was that the platform fees are actually very high. So if you have a £1 or $1 tier on your Patreon, most of that's going to get swallowed up in platform fees. So £2 or $2 minimum is the table stakes for those. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's sort of a bit of a culture of kind of creators with that, kind of that £1 or $1 tier to kind of all support each other in that sense of,
yes,
kind of. I know I've done the same. In previous years of kind of friends start Patreon up on chuck one into the hat kind of thing, and
unfortunately they don't get much of that if it's at that sort of level. They don't. I mean, it's literally pennies that they'll be getting from for a £1 donation. The £2 tier makes $2 tier makes much more sense. But then it's about supporting each other and getting access to each other's member content, which is always interesting to see.
Yeah, that's true.
Depressing in some ways too. My YouTube pal Keith Brown. I've got a little WhatsApp chat group, and we'll roll on each other's Patreon things. And I get Keith Brown's inviting you to early access of his, and it's Tuesday. Fucking hell, I haven't shot mine yet. Video's coming out on Friday. I haven't even got near to doing mine.
Yeah. Slow down, you're making us all look bad.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was going to say, this sounds like potentially quite a good thing. It depends on what mood you're in that week, isn't it? I suppose some weeks it might be.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. Oh, he's got it out. I'll get that finished. Get it out. And
I don't know.
Other weeks it's like, how on earth?
Yeah, it's difficult trying to manage your own schedules in comparison to other people's, because we're all working at a slightly different rate. There's a lot to be said for pumping out a weekly video, but it's a lot of work to do, and I'm not asking for sympathy or anything, but it is, it is a lot of work, and I do two member videos a week as well. But last year I did I went to a fortnightly schedule, which is really comfortable, but definitely the channel dipped away. It definitely wasn't getting the same sort of engagement. And there are some very successful channels that only do a video a fortnight or a video a month. But yeah, we'll presume I'm not one of them, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm back on the weekly treadmill for a while. I took January off. I didn't post anything in January, which is fantastic, and I think I'll take another break over summer, which should be sort of fairly soon, just because I need time to concentrate on other things. Taking a month off. I still did the member videos. I didn't post any public videos in January, and that was really nice to be able to concentrate on products and things, other stuff, long-term strategies for the channel, and all that sort of tedious business stuff. Boring but important. Yeah,
straight out the marketing handbook.
Yeah, a little bit. It's I have a topic on the many. I don't know how many words I wrote, actually. It's probably one of the many topics I proposed was business, or indeed podcasting for pleasure. YouTube or podcasting for pleasure or for business. Yeah. And I'm all business. It's a business like any other. I do love what I do, but it's a business.
It started like that, though, did it? Really? Do you think it started for you?
I've always been relentlessly commercial because I've never really made any money, and I've got to get a shilling turning somehow. But it started off this is my 7th year. 2015, I posted my first video, and then I did another one 6 months later, because you've got to be regular, I was told. And then I did another one 6 months after that. So yeah,
consistent
on the money, yeah. And then I decided to give it a shot, posting a video a week for a year to see what happened, basically. And it started out. I was fairly active on a forum back in those days, and the question would always come up about shaker style panel doors. What's the best approach? And I had my little technique for doing that. And I used to be a photographer, so I was taking pictures of these things to illustrate the definitive guide to making shaker style panel doors. And I realized it would have been so much easier to take video of it instead. So I did. And then I did a little top and tail to the video, and I was going to call myself 5-minute woodwork, which is very snappy. But I was gutted that the first video was 5 minutes and 9 seconds or something. Couldn't quite get it down to 5 minutes.
It's like with anything, any hobby, it's like I'm going to do this until 11. It's like, it's 11:05. I better get till 12. Yeah, anything you enjoy, just round it up.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I did that, and then you've done one. You've got to give it a fair shot, haven't you? So I committed to doing a video a week for a year, and to see what happens. And here we are.
Yeah.
Wherever we are, I don't know whether it counts as success or not, but bizarrely, it's what I do for a living now, which is pretty amazing.
Well, I think that alone says that was successful. I mean, was that something that you thought could happen or would happen?
Not initially, no, not in a million years. I was far too old to start a YouTube channel, far too old to be doing that kind of thing, and yet here we are. It was the furthest thing from my mind, and then as you do more of it, and you get a little bit of success. There's an old Irish joke, but it's about drinking, about boozing, and it's if you miss a day's work because of the drink, because of the booze, and it's time to give up the work. And YouTube was my booze. The work was getting in the way, and after a couple of years, getting on for 3, the planets didn't quite align, but I could sort of slap a couple of them into position, and it decided it was if not now, then when kind of thing. My wife had just retired, mortgage was paid off. I wasn't making enough money off the whole of the YouTube enterprise to continue to call it a living, but I figured I could do a little job a month kind of thing. I don't.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Top up just to get me up. I've got a note somewhere. I did 14. The whole YouTube enterprise generated £14,500 in the year before I decided to go full time. That was 2019, and I figured I'd need about 20 a year to make ends meet. So I was kind of 6,000 short, 500 quid a month. That's a bookcase or a set of shelves or something. I could probably do that.
Yeah.
And then that would free me up enough time to concentrate on the YouTube stuff and see if we could grow that into any other meaningful thing. And it worked. Yeah. I did one job in the January. I had my last set of wardrobes already booked in for the February, and I never did another client work again. Yes.
Do you miss it at all?
No. Oh, no. I miss the regular making, but I don't miss the the business of doing it all. I did
there's a difference, isn't there, between the challenge of building something to someone else's spec and the challenge of dealing with people from a business point of view when you're making something and trying to recoup costs.
And finding the work and all the other 1,001 things that you have to do. I still do a little bit. I've got some doors to make of fit for my son for his kitchen, and there's a little bit to do in the house, which I'll do once the building work is done. But no, my days of
contract work,
of grinding out regular fitted furniture,
painted an entire room green.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't miss that aspect of it at all. I don't really miss making MDF boxes either, because that's all they were really. They were just, in the nicest possible way, making MDF boxes and calling them furniture, which is a certain skill in itself.
Absolutely. I mean, that's back to marketing, isn't it? To be able to frame it correctly.
Yes.
Anything can be simplified. I mean, how many tools in the workshop are basically just a hammer or a chisel?
But everything's a hammer, basically.
Most
things are chisels as well.
Yes. Yeah, just some odd
circular saws, just lots of tiny chisels spinning around.
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the in fact, the very first sort of point you put on the notes that you sent, which I must say, we don't often get the guests sort of sending us suggestions for. we always ask, actually. We do always ask.
Okay.
If some people do want to talk about whatever. Normally, we just kind of agree it beforehand in the sort of the pre-chat, which just goes to show how organised you are, and which is probably why you have become successful. But you kind of make Essential 2019 as a kind of a turning point for you. And that's where we first kind of, although I'd been following you for a few years at that point. Right. I think that was the point where we kind of sort of met and started.
We first met and we
in the same hotel.
Chatted. That's right.
Together.
It's
clearly the turning point.
It was.
And Welsh cakes is what made it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was. I've never really spoken about it publicly. But I started doing YouTube in 2016, late 2016, and had I was very happy with the success that I had in terms of views and subscribers and all that sort of stuff. And by the end of 2018, the channel had pretty much flatlined. Nothing I was doing was working. The wasn't growing. The views were okay, but the subscriber growth was back to a few hundred a month kind of thing, which is going back to the first sort of couple of months of the channel. And I was at a slight loss as to what to do. And I'd started a podcast with Andy Mack, Castle Fannyman, which was doing quite well in its own little way. And we decided to
podcast, which, if anyone's very much, I think, a UK makers podcast, particularly, I think perhaps towards the more perhaps professional end of the sort of maker world.
Yeah, we made the whole thing up as we went along. So whatever we
no idea.
There's a familiar, that's right. So it sort of developed into whatever we wanted to talk about, really. And it was a good show. I think we set a fairly high bar for production values, if you like. We would have killed for this kind of stuff back then, all this online business. But we were recording our own stuff, and Andy was editing. Anyway, it achieved a certain amount of success, and we decided to spend the money on a stand at Maker Central. I missed the first one in 2018 because I was in New York. It was on a bank holiday weekend. I got the 2 bank holidays in May, and I got the wrong one. So we were already committed to going to New York. I was the only person in Brooklyn wishing they were in Birmingham, NEC. So anyway, we had the stand booked, and it was relatively expensive for just the two of us. Me and Andy were both working full time at the time. We had a podcast, we had our own little YouTube channels, and mine was dead in the water. There was just nothing going on. And what just astounded me, or took my breath away, and Andy's as well, was that the number of people who came to visit us on the stand. I'd never experienced it. You make these little videos and you get good feedback from them and all that sort of stuff. But to actually have people queuing up all day just to talk to you and to get a selfie with you that's a level of I mean, I find it bizarre. Why would anybody do that for me? It's very. I'm incredibly grateful for it, but quite unlike anything else I'd ever experienced. So there was a real sense of imposter syndrome there, because I had these old people queuing up, saying how much they appreciated the channel, and yet it just wasn't growing. It was just completely flat and nothing happening. And I'd actually met one of my early Patreon supporters. In fact, his mother had just passed away, and he was just on a flying visit. He came and chatted to me for a little while. And you see so many people, always, remember everybody. And I got an email from him a couple of weeks later, which laid out a roadmap. And I'd had these thoughts already, but they kind of crystallized them and redefined them for me, of what you could do with that level of interest in what you're doing. So it wasn't about YouTube and YouTube's success exactly, whether that's views or subscribers or any of that, or AdSense income. But it was about growing an audience and doing something with that. And this leads into the Kevin Kelly 1,000 True Fans thing, what Mary Spender's been doing with her music channel. I know you talked about that with Carl, and so many other people on YouTube, and guys in the woodworking business as well. The Steve Ramsey has his weekend woodworker courses and his those I'm going to forget the names now.
And stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
Mere
Mortals there. And I realized then that you can do more than just YouTube. It's not just about YouTube. YouTube's fantastic, and producing ad-supported content will always be part of my overall strategy. But growing an audience of your own and taking them with you on your own little journey is a much more interesting way of doing it. Again, like we said a little bit earlier on with Patreon, you don't really have your own business. You've just got a little piece of Patreon or YouTube's business. Whereas if you can take those people down your own path, then you don't own them, but you can control where you're going much more readily. So yeah, it was a pivotal moment for me, and it was then that I started concentrating on doing more regular Patreon videos, exclusive content. It was a turning point, it really was. And out of that, then of course we got products and all kinds of other things which came along to other distractions. But it was a fascinating, that 2019 weekend on that stand was a really pivotal moment. And I've been to every other Maker Central that they've had with varying degrees of success. Obviously, we've had the bizarre COVID years, which took their toll in many ways.
Very much so.
But it's definitely. I can remember that 2019. I was going to say the first Mega Essential was my first as well because I missed the previous year, and you and Andy were just jam packed all weekend.
We didn't get off the stand. We arrived, all bright and shiny on the Saturday morning, having sort of lashed it up in the bar the night before, inevitably. Excuse me. And meeting people that you've never met before. We met Matt Smith, Badger Bookshop, for the first time in the bar there, and chatted to other people as well. And I kept seeing Matt Esley walking around. I must introduce myself to him. And we ended up sort of waving to each other on the way out on the Sunday. But it was a great show. It was it was the first one of its sort of kind, really, wasn't it? Where it brought all the different kind of making things together. Not just woodworking, not just a trade show, not just people bashing metal or making unicorns out of hot glue or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I think the 2019 show sort of is or up until this year, I think it had been the kind of the benchmark, because it had the lessons learned from the first show and kind of done a little bit more to bring a little bit more to it and things. And so obviously going slightly awry with the COVID years, but I think that's where there's the turning point now. I think is where it's kind of that step along.
Yeah, it was a good. This year was a good show. Have you had a good time there? You seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Exhausting, but it was.
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, and again, a little bit what we were talking about before, your business or pleasure. If you're there and working, then it's a slightly different vibe to it. I've never been I would love to go just as a punter, just as a guest and float around, but there's always been other pressures, other needs.
Yeah, I mean, the first 2 years that was I was at the first one, so 2018, 2019, I was there as a punter. So it's only been the last two where I've been on the Maker stand.
Right.
So it's still, I mean, that's relatively laid back for us in that sense. It's high pressure and relentless, constant stream of people. It's still laid back in terms of we're not trying to make money from it or anything like that. So
it changes things, and again, it's one of the many topics. Whether you do it for business or pleasure, and if you're making one of those events a sales thing, then it's definitely a very different sort of feeling. You almost need you need to be doing the sales pitches, and you almost want somebody else there to be dealing with the order fulfillment and all that sort of stuff. And that makes it altogether a different kind of proposition rather than this year. This year I was. Yeah, that's right. This year I was just doing a meet and greet, so wasn't trying to do any sales or anything like that, which is really nice.
Yeah, I mean that changed. I mean that must have changed the vibe for you because last year you were busy. You sold a lot of stuff.
I had a big stand last year. Last year I was trying to do in 2022. I was trying to get a big stand and get some of the guys that I knew on it because my products were doing quite well, and I could get a big stand in a prime spot, albeit at a price. And for one reason and another, not everybody, the timing just didn't work out for a number of people. So we ended up on a big stand with relatively few people on it, which means that just to kind of break even, I had to do a lot of salesy kind of stuff. And I shifted a lot of product and it worked out well in that regard. But it was a very different proposition from this year. This year was much more relaxed, much happier. Just managing things like getting the stock there, and trying to juggle. I took far too much of one particular type. I had so much of it, we couldn't get it in the car. So fortunately, somebody else took it away for me and then shipped it over to me. So it was all a bit stressful, and you could do without it. Wasn't an awful lot of fun. That part of it.
I think as well, setup on the Friday isn't too bad. It's relatively calm and relaxed. But then the kind of the stripped down Sunday night, once you've had, kind of 2 evenings in the bar and 2 full days of being flat out, to then have to suddenly try and knock everything down and get it packed away in an instant is heavy going.
It is. I mean, we had a fairly this year. I was on Stuart from Proper DIY stand, and it was a fairly modest stand and just right actually. So we didn't have much stuff there. No sales. In fact, everything I had fitted on one trolley, so a single trolley's worth. That was me done. Lean production. Yeah.
Didn't quite work out that way for us, but never mind.
No, well, depends what you're showing, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. So same approach next year, do you think?
I think so. I think we're can't say too much about it. We're trying to get a few more people involved. We had a live chat thing on the Sunday morning, which was very well attended. First time I've ever spoken in public. So again, more than a little imposter syndrome going on there. But no, it's great. One of those things. Roberto Blake, do you know him from one of the YouTube gurus? Yeah, when I was first setting up on YouTube, he talked about people with only 40 subscribers and how they grow their channel. And he said, well, you get 40 people in a room and you've got to talk to them. You think that's a pretty big crowd. That's not a small number.
No.
And there were about 200 seats available on stage 2. And we had, most of those were taken, and we had people standing around the edge as well.
Yep.
So that it helps you kind of visualize things much more clearly when you actually get to see people.
How did that? If you've talked in front of just over 200 people, how did that sit in your mind then when you looked at your next video release and thought, how many people had watched that? That comparisonitis back to...
I never gave it a second thought, I've got to be honest. But it's a very good point, and I probably should have done. Certainly it made me appreciate the subscriber count that I have. And I know it's always people with a couple of million subscribers who tell you that subscriber count doesn't count for much. And I could have filled that stage 2 1,000 times over with my people, which is quite a sobering thought, really.
I think as humans, we struggle to conceptualize very large and very small. So when you've got something like 40 or 200, you can kind of visualize that. But when you talk about millions of things, it's difficult to grasp that.
Yeah, I try and sort of visualize that sort of thing in terms of sports arenas. The O2 will hold 20,000 people. That's a crowd.
Yeah.
It's that. Yeah, as YouTubers, we tend to kind of we talk to a camera. Yeah, we're seeing a picture of if we've got a screen as well. We're seeing a picture of ourselves when we record something, and it's easy to forget that actually there's other people going to be watching this. And I know sometimes I tend to sort of try and think of the camera as a person that I'm talking to if I'm doing something to the camera, because that kind of just helps to kind of make it a little bit more conversational.
Yes.
In order to kind of just make it less stilted, because a lot of people struggle to talk to. It's a skill, like anything else. It's a skill. It's not something that comes naturally to people to talk to a camera or even, and the whole then sort of stepping that up to, like you say, you're imagining a room with 40 people in it. It's like from my teaching background here. Typically, a class in UK secondary school in most subjects is about 30 students.
Yeah.
And most teachers are used to that. Sometimes it might be a few more. 32, 34, 35. Yeah, if you teach design technology, it's limited to 20. If you teach sixth form, it might be less than 20. I mean, the smallest class I ever had was 2 students. And the largest class I've ever had was, I think, 34. Yeah, and I know people who've taught larger classes. And it is then taking that step up to talk to a crowd of 200. A lot of teachers won't be able to do that. They'll talk in their class of 30, not at all. But you ask them to stand on a stage in front of 300 students.
Yeah, it's like doing the assembly rather than doing a.
Yes, yeah. They struggle to do that. So it's actually it's quite a shift in just the mental place you need to be in order to kind of talk to those people and to have the skills to do that. It's not an easy shift. For I mean, some people find it easy, like anything else. There's always people who kind of will step into it and just they've never talked in public before, and yet here they are with 1,000 people in front of them, and there's no nerves. They're talking eloquently. They're not umming and ahhing. There's no pause. It's just.
I hate can't even do that on my own.
Yeah, exactly. Talking to a camera, just 15 takes on and you've got a script as well. Yeah, I know. Some people are just naturally gifted at doing that kind of thing. Some people can do it, but perhaps shouldn't. And for the rest of us, you just got to keep plugging away, and
a lot of it's practice as well.
Learn how to hide your mistakes, basically. Yeah, you don't really get better at it. You just get to the point where you hide your mistakes well enough that only you notice. That's the pro tip there.
I mean, that's music, isn't it? That's the
music
the thing that everyone says about. Well, yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. Not to stress about missing a note or something like that. Is you've missed it, but everyone else listening is still immersed in it. If you flub a word or something like that, it's not the end of the world. Usually. Depending on the mistake.
Yeah, President of the United States, flubbing the word fire.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit too political, that one.
I'm going to stay away from that one.
Yeah, current state of the world. Yeah.
Wise plan.
Yeah. So you got plans for you put in place. We won't push on the plans. Yeah, we'll wait and see what.
We've got a few irons in the fire. Yeah, we would like to expand the general idea of having the stand with everybody's favorite YouTubers on it, and maybe those YouTubers aren't there for the whole weekend. Maybe they're there for a specific 2-hour slot, and you can come and see them there if you like. I mean, after we did our little talk. Because obviously they wanted us off the stage pronto because they've got another group coming in. A lot of people came back to chat to us on our stand, which is really nice. We managed to block the corridor and got the fire marshals all uptight and all that sort of stuff. And that was just a really nice vibe to have everybody there and chatting. And it would be nice if we could sort of extend that. To cover the whole of the weekend, not necessarily with everybody there at the same time, but people coming and going.
There's a lot of merit in having, like you said, the kind of having the YouTubers that people want to come and meet in a place. I think there's a lot of merit in doing that for the kind of the audience that you folks kind of have.
I
know that there is the kind of the meet and greet YouTubers area and things, but that tends to be the this person's got 2 million subs, this person's got 1.5 million subs.
It's the Jimmy Loresters and the Colin Furzes and the Macro Moders and those guys, and
to be able to say here's the approachable stand kind of thing.
Yes.
The YouTube elite versus the YouTube middle class.
Yeah, that's right. The content creators middle class. I did have that as the creator middle class. That is I wish I'd coined that phrase myself. I did steal
beautifully.
That.
You can put MC, and only listeners of the podcast will know that you mean middle class.
Perfect. It's a very valid point though. The phrase the creator middle class. came from a guy called Charles Haynes, and Charles runs a talent agency called Ziggurat XYZ, who they represent some quite prominent YouTubers. And he runs an annual group conference kind of thing, a summit, and I've been fortunate to be invited to all of them. And this phrase, the creator middle class, is one of his, and it's basically exactly what it sounds like. We are not viral superstars. We are not, we're not assuming that we are those people who are going to be spectacular in terms of growth or views, but we do okay. It's
you're
nice.
The supervisors and team leaders.
It's nice and it's steady. Yeah, it's nice and it's steady, and we do all right out of the whole game, the whole business, and it's. I think that more than anything is what I would advise people to try and do. Look for that kind of sustainable growth, sustainable incomes coming from all this kind of thing, rather than looking for, it's lovely to have the videos that take off and go mad. But coming down the other side is a pain in the neck.
Yeah, but it's also sort of plodding away and learning as you go, and having a go at something. It's not working, having a go at something else, but just keeping going.
Yeah. Keep showing up. There's a lot to be said for keeping showing up. Just keep at it. As always, there's a lot of contradictory advice about this stuff. Keep at it, but know when to quit. Yeah. But keep showing up. Keep making the videos. One of the benefits of doing a weekly video is that sometimes you're going to have a bit of a turkey, and there's like another round coming into the chamber next week.
Another week. Yeah.
Whereas if you're on a fortnightly schedule, as I found last year, if you have a bit of a duffer and maybe you get 2 on the bounce, then suddenly it's like a month or 6 weeks before you pick up that momentum again. Whereas at least on a weekly schedule, it keeps rolling around. There are different strategies for all this sort of stuff, and they all work for different people. Whether that's
the beauty of it in some ways, isn't it? It's you see these kind of channels that are follow me to find out the YouTube strategies. It's like it's about pretty much anything. They become successful because they're kind of sort of trying to sell their approach to sort of YouTube. Most of which is the
pyramid scheme approach, isn't it?
Yeah. So they do really well at trying to get other people going, but that's perhaps another discussion. But I think something that I kind of sort of learned quite a few years ago, and I've tried to tell a few people, is that if just because somebody, some big name YouTube strategy guy is saying, your videos need to be between 8 minutes and 36 seconds and 9 minutes 45 seconds. Otherwise, you won't be, the algorithm won't promote you or anything like that. It's like, well, no, there's plenty of successful channels that are doing 30-minute videos, 40-minute videos, hour-long videos. There are plenty of people doing very well with sort of 3 or 4 minute videos. It's finding what works for you and the content you want to produce. And if you do that and forget the word algorithm, but start, as you mentioned earlier, start thinking of it, the audience.
Yeah.
And actually, you might find a bit more success.
Well, the thing is, it's a ladder, isn't it? If you're climbing a ladder and you've got a foot on a rung and a hand on a rung, you're not looking to the top of the ladder to try and get the next rung.
Yeah.
So if you look at the people who are the next level up from you and see what's been working for them, what their approach has been, you're much more likely to take that step to where they are, and then you can have a look at the next rung above them. There's no point going from 10 subs to 1 million subs as your next goal on the thing, because
No.
gulf between those two is colossal.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, I'm saying this as someone with no channel, but
Well, yeah. I'm sure you're right.
Yeah, I mean, it's finding a strategy, isn't it? It's taking an approach, trying things. If it works, it works. If it stops working, try something else. Yeah, if something else works, keep trying that for a bit.
Yeah.
But don't kind of. I think there's a huge number of very small channels that maybe give up too soon. They maybe try a few things. They may sort of go, "Oh, I've got to have a fancy intro," and they do a fancy intro, but they haven't got good lighting or good audio, or they're not grabbing the audience's attention.
It's very easy to get sucked into that share, like, and subscribe. Follow me style of things, when actually, yeah, you just need to get the basics down to start with. Get the story right. Try and figure out who you're making the videos for, what you want to say about them. Some of the best channels that I've watched, and perhaps we'll talk about those shortly, because I know you want to chat about what we've been watching. Some of the ones that I really like are just people who just do things they enjoy, but they do it so well.
Hell of a lot to be said for that. Yeah,
they do it so well.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you. Is, you mentioned before about kind of the shift from just grunt day job kind of stuff, and not missing that now that you're doing what you enjoy. And would you still pursue the YouTube thing if it just became just work again and it wasn't something you enjoy? If the level of enjoyment dropped down to the same as what work was?
That's a really interesting question, Jamie. I don't know is the short answer. I really enjoy making videos. I enjoy the structure of them. I like shooting and editing and all that sort of stuff. So I suspect I would still make videos. But again, it's a bit like acting versus writing. The writers can write the great novel or the fantastic screenplay, but the actors need an audience in order to perform properly.
Yeah.
You can do it in front of the mirror, but it's not quite the same. And thanks to the likes of YouTube or Patreon or whatever else, then maybe controlling that method of distribution, actors can do that too. But it's much more to do with making something, for me anyway, making something and getting it out there and getting it seen. If I was just making videos for myself, then they'd probably be about 5 hours long and incredibly detailed. I know it seems like my videos are 5 hours long now, but they're really not. I hope it never gets to that stage where it becomes like work, because I just really,
I guess
really
you've got the advantage now, of course, that you can choose what projects you want to make. That's going to help, rather than just kind of going, "Oh, I've got another fitted wardrobe to do."
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems, in a lot of ways, that was easier because you just shot video on whatever was happened to come through the workshop that week, kind of thing. But at the same time, if it was another set of fitted wardrobes, then you've got to try and make that interesting, because
from the last one.
That's right. And to be honest, most fitted wardrobes are pretty much the same. In the nicest way, there were MDF boxes with slight variations in size and shape.
That's where you have what's the latest tool from Lidl or Aldi that I can incorporate?
Yeah, I mean that's I don't know, the tool review thing. I just find them interesting generally. I've got to say I do have a slight obsession with cheap power tools, and this stems from watching my dad, who was very capable handy around the house, let's say, but working with the most inadequate of tools when I was growing up as late early mid 70s, and I know we complain about the quality of the supermarket saws and all that sort of stuff, but to be able to just go to a supermarket and buy tools that work like that well is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
A
I find
pint of milk, a loaf of bread, and a circular saw.
right.
Yeah,
and an axle stand.
And at the price point that's affordable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you there. My dad never really had. I think that the two lessons I learned from my dad about kind of sort of DIY was that, you can do it. You can have a go at anything. And mostly that came out of the fact that we couldn't afford for him not to do, to get somebody in to do job. But the other one, which is kind of a contrary lesson in some ways, was that he never really had the right tools for the job. And I'm fortunate to be in a position, or have been in the position, to be able to afford generally to get the right tools for the job.
Yeah.
And it just makes life so much easier.
It does.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember him taking skin off his fingers and knuckles when he's trying to use a spanner that's the wrong size, doing something in a car. Yeah, because he just didn't have it. And the adjustable he had, or this, trying to do things on a car with the Stilsons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not a good move. But that's lessons you learn when you sort of you're sort of doing those sort of projects.
And those lessons are valuable too. But one of the most valuable lessons is that if you can buy the right tool cheaply enough, get it done.
It's time saving and it's stress saving, and I think as well, not just the tools but the consumables. I'll quite happily use a super cheap knackered old drill, but I'll stick a decent drill bit in it, and I'll use some decent screws. The amount of projects I've ruined where I've grabbed some really cheap nasty screws that just happen to be within arm's reach because I needed them on that day, and then snap the head off, and
it's always fun, isn't it, getting those out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or if you snapped it and you put in so much force onto it and you end up just dinging the workpiece. And
we had one in the men's shed last week. It was somebody was trying to put some hinges on an A-frame, and the screws that had been supplied with the hinges, which were probably sort of 18mm screws, brass, the kind of coloured brass.
Yeah, electroplate.
They were clearly a Positron number 2 sized. But a Positron number 2 didn't fit. No, the Positron number 1 because they were too shallow.
Yeah,
they just hadn't been. They hadn't been
not properly formed.
Okay, now repeat after me. Rule number 1: never use the screws that come with hinges.
No, all the screws that come with bathroom cabinets to fit on.
No.
Yeah, but it was just like he was grabbing. It was like, oh, this bit's not fitting. I said, well, I'll try some of the other bits. It was like, because it was like he was struggling with it. It was just like, I'm gonna have a look. He said, what size is this? I said, well, it looks like PZ2. Said, there's a PZ2. And I gave him one because I take a few of my own tools with me because I know I've got things in my pockets ready to go that work, and I'm going to sort of chase around trying to find. I'll supply screwdriver bits. It isn't necessarily great, so I always have a couple of those little flip packs, with kind of a selection pack in my pocket. So I dug out, a couple of good ones. None of them fitted. Really good driver bits, some nice and cokey ones. Didn't fit at all. And it was just like, just use some of those other screws. Exactly that point. Just use some of those other screws.
I bought back when Maplin had announced that they were closing down. So when they'd started reducing the prices first time around, they had a screwdriver that was there that really intrigued me. I had to get it just for what it was, because it claimed to be able to fit number 1 and number 2 Phillips and Posi from the one driver.
Okay.
Yeah, they're all different geometries. They're not interchangeable. But the result is that this screwdriver doesn't fit anything.
Might fit these hinge screws.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Is you know that kind of when you're using something like a Phillips bit in a posi drive screw, and it's just enough you can get it moving, but you know that you're going to have to be really careful. That's what this driver is like in any screw that you put it against. It's that kind of it's vaguely enough that if you're really in a pinch and you haven't got anything else, that you'll have to make do. But for anything that you actually need to,
and the screw isn't super tight. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if I can't just use my thumb, then I might grab this if there's nothing else there. Yeah. It's more that kind of the joke screwdriver that you hand to someone,
Yes.
in that moment where they go, I need a screwdriver. Yeah. What size? I have no idea. Right, have this.
I got rid of all my Phillips screws. I kept some of the machine box. I've got boxes full of assorted, particularly small ones. The sort of things you get from the back of a computer. Those sort of things. So apart from those, in terms of woodworking, I got rid of all my Phillips years ago. It was just such a nightmare. So
it's only the drywall screws for me that are Phillips. Everything else is usually.
Yeah, I keep a drywall bit in the box with them. Yeah, one of the ones with the shroud, so that
the little
deep. Yeah. But other than those, there's just none. Not having it.
Wise man.
Yeah.
Makes life a lot easier.
It just amazes me what people use drywall screws for. You start digging through old bits of timber or stuff, and you find drywall screws in everything, don't you? I mean, I can't stand them. I know what they do. I know why they are the way they are. But I just can't imagine why people would use them to put a chipboard floor down or.
The only time that I use them now is if the wood is questionable and I need a really coarse thread,
right?
Or if I just want it to be a black screw. That's the only time.
Aesthetics, that's a good reason for using
it is purely
drywall screws.
It's light wood on black screws. That'll do. Yeah.
I've got a box full. I've got a plan because I had this idea when I was doing the Thoughts Towards Treasure Trade. One of the ideas I was going to do was to make a piece of artwork. So remember those not the string art that was famous in the 70s, where you kind of just had a bunch of nails and you just had string them.
Yeah.
But I'd seen many years ago something where somebody made an image, and essentially it was just like a pixelated image using screws, and they just painted each screw a different color.
Right.
So I had this sort of thought of doing that for the Thoughts Towards Treasure Trade this year.
But did you do the maths on how many screws you would need to manually drive in?
Yeah. Hey, you're looking at the guy. I've made 2 better nails.
Good point.
If you make a better nails, the number of holes you have to drill, and then just the most important. Well, I say most important thing. One of the most important things when making a bed of nails is you have to make sure that all the nails are the same length.
Yeah.
And if you buy a box of say 1,000 6-inch nails, 150 millimeter nails, whatever, or potentially 2,000, and you're having to use most of them, you've got to go through and make sure they're all the same length, because what you don't want is one that's just ever so slightly bigger, and it happens. I think when I did it, I think I had about 50 or 60 nails that I couldn't use on with the rest because it would hurt.
Yes, I just love the idea of going back with you've got this box of 2,000 nails, and you go, I don't like these 50 because they're
out of tolerance.
Yeah.
I think somebody pulls the British Standard off the shelf and goes, well, actually,
there probably is, isn't there? Probably is a British Standard for
yeah. Haven't worked in,
and an ISO equivalent probably.
Yeah. And nailing back will certainly grab your attention. which kind of links
I can
in.
imagine.
What a
Beautiful segue.
Yeah,
Yes.
been taking lessons from Steve and Rasmus. Yeah, so we get the point of view. We've for those who haven't kind of worked it out from last week, we're changing sort of tack slightly. We are shortening the YouTube side of things. We will do our attention grabbers, but then we will be finishing off and going to the after show, which will be available for our Patreon
member platform.
Yeah, for our.
And how do people find the after show, Andrew?
That will be on.
He's good, isn't he?
Yeah. Sorry, he does it for business. Yeah. Go to patreon.com, make us waffle, and we will be there. Yeah. Links will be in the show notes already for underneath the.
Wonderful. And are there tiers? Or is it all?
No, not at the moment. Not really. No.
Not really.
No.
Okay. So one
it's
low
about generosity. So anyone.
One low contribution gets you the whole.
Gets the whole gamut of contributions. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'll have to have another chat with you and take some lessons. Member platforms, better use of it. So in terms of that would also be something for grabbing my attention for later on. But yes. You're already familiar with the show I haven't been on a few weeks ago with I think. So what's been grabbing your attention?
Oh gosh, I don't watch a lot of other woodworking YouTubers.
Books doesn't have to be. It can be anything.
Funny old thing, yeah. But I do catch up with Scott Brown and Michael Alm, who are both good channels. Adam Savage, I enjoy. But through Adam Savage, I've come across another channel called Wristwatch Revival. I am a watch guy. I do like watches, and there are many watch type channels on YouTube. But Wristwatch Revival is a guy from Marshall. Hello, I'm Marshall. Thanks for stopping by. And he just does this for fun. He strips watches down and services them and gets them working again. Sometimes he does restorations on them. He tries to keep them sort of pretty original. And it's just fascinating. I say I learned of it through Adam Savage because he's just bought a digital microscope that this guy Marshall has, because he has this phenomenally powerful, incredibly detailed imagery of watch internals. It's I find it fascinating.
I agree.
Just purely mechanical, mostly wristwatches, sometimes pocket watches. Some of them much older than you might think, and just I've never taken a watch apart, and it's something I'd quite like to do.
I was just going to ask, is that something you'd like to try at some point?
It is. I've got a few watches, and they're not all fantastic. So I may well try. And the benefit of having a tinker with a watch that I own, which isn't of any great value, is of course that the movements are fairly standard commercial movements, so that you'd be able to get the bits for them, or if push came to shove, an entire separate movement for not much money if I really stuffed it up. But I think it would be really interesting to have a play with, because they're probably wristwatches in particular, and mechanical watch movements are some of the most complex mechanical parts, mechanisms that you can get pretty much, and in such fine tolerances in such a small scale as well. They're quite remarkable. I don't know if my hands or my eyesight is good enough.
Well, the microscope.
I definitely need to be needing
the eyesight out, doesn't it?
Yeah. I definitely
after
the
2019 Maker Central, I've forgotten his first name. Lowen Designs was there, and he had a kind of workshop partner whose name I forget now, who was into horology, who was one half of a podcast, name of also I forget off the top of my head. I listened to that for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating listening to them talk about. They were very much into watches and pens, mostly watches, and they were talking about some of the sort of technology behind manufacturing watches from scratch, literally starting with sort of base metal, even printing the dials.
Yes.
And it was fascinating. I did look to see about getting, if there were courses available.
Right.
There are. The British Horological Institute, I think.
Okay.
Run courses. Yeah, they're not cheap.
No, I could imagine not.
Yeah, seriously not cheap. And I looked at the price of it and I thought, that's
one
a rabbit
day.
hole. That's not a rabbit hole I can afford to go down.
Yeah. Okay.
Right now,
fair
and I'm
point.
going to stay away from it because it's. I'm not into watches big time, but I could be. I've still got pretty. I think I've got every watch I've ever had.
Okay.
Which is quite a few, and nothing expensive. I think the most expensive watch I've ever had was kind of £60 or £70, brand new.
I started getting into watches actually quite young. When I think it was for my 10th birthday. I asked for a dive watch with a rubber strap, and it came from Woolworths, my one.
So not a classic Seiko.
But many years later, I realised that the one I'd seen that sparked that interest was a classic Seiko diver, 6105 Willard, So anyway, that sparked a very small, very modest sort of collection.
I did learn actually listening to that podcast that there was, which I'll dig it out and I'll put it in the show notes, that you could actually kind of, like with those Seikos, you can buy every single part, so you can actually produce your own custom version.
Yeah,
obviously it's
and people do, people do,
and it's just something I want. Cuz for the benefits of the audio listeners. Cuz who was on last week has just posted the comment. It says horology is a time-consuming rabbit hole.
Only if you eat them.
So the whole kind of particular level of Seiko, you can get a variety of movements, you can get a variety of cases, variety of straps, and produce your own sort of custom build. That might still happen one day. But I have a pocket watch.
Cool.
I have a couple of pocket watches upstairs that were always around when I was a small kid.
Right.
And one of them particularly, I know one of them I believe was my grandfather's. The other one, I don't know the heritage of it, other than it was always around, but it never worked. I believe probably the mainspring, and we could never afford, afford to get it fixed. But I've kept it, and it's the sort of thing that maybe one day, maybe I will kind of pick up a knackered one from a car boot sale or just eBay or something and have a go at fixing it
and have a go at it.
And have a go on that one and actually get it working. So
really cool.
Be a nice thing to do. Yeah.
Given the scale and the complexity and stuff, are you both familiar with Pablo Cimadevilla? He's horribly butchering his last name. No. Yeah, jeweler and artist.
The jeweler in the wheelchair.
Yeah, he's phenomenally gifted and hugely talented. It does a lot of very, very, very intricate jewelry, and that'll be the same thing of just starting with some base metals, and just we'll go through the process. He's on Instagram and
he's on YouTube as well.
He's on YouTube as well. Yeah,
I don't think he's put anything out on YouTube for a while. I might be wrong. I certainly haven't noticed anything on my feed.
There's a lot of just small snippets of his process with things like ring making and things. He was doing some micro TIG on a ring earlier today. Just welding the band together through the microscope. Yeah, and putting all these little micro TIG beads in, and then flattening it all out, and then grinding it all smooth. And that kind of super precision to just set stones that are like 0.5 millimeter,
Gosh.
like all the way around a ring, as he's there with the the rotary tool grinding out the sort of the cones that set in the just amazing to watch. That kind of intricacy and precision. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Yeah, great. I tend to watch things that catch my attention. I quite like sort of architectural type stuff. There's a channel called Never Too Small, which concentrates on very small apartments, very small. Some of them are, only 600 square feet, so not that small. But what's interesting about them is they often have some quite nice custom cabinetry in them, because they're obviously people are trying to fit as much as possible into a relatively small space. So that's an interesting one. Australian channel.
Some of those are fascinating.
Yeah.
I think there's very similar, often, but sometimes vastly different. Kristen Dixon.
Yes.
I want to say.
Yes.
You kind of visit some really interesting homes.
Yeah. And Architectural Digest actually do some really good videos on 5 types of New York apartment, for example, and the different sort of how the buildings developed and the apartment styles. They do some slightly nauseating open door things with celebrities and homes of the rich and famous kind of thing.
Through the keyhole style.
That's right. Yes, if you've got to pick the ones you want to watch. Although I have to say the one of Lily Allen's Brooklyn townhouse was really interesting. Who knew she was married to the guy from Stranger Things? You probably did, didn't you? Of course you did. But yeah, anyway. No? Okay.
No, not me.
Anyway, no, interesting. I'm always interested, again. The one thing I do actually miss about not doing sort of fitted furniture for people is you don't get to have a poke around inside other people's homes anymore, in a nice way, not in a nasty voyeuristic way. But it's always interesting to see what other people have, and how their houses are sort of arranged.
Definitely. Yeah,
that's the beauty of something like Airbnb, though, isn't it? Where that ability to kind of just go and stay somewhere, and just kind of go. We've stayed in a place in Devon a couple of times, same place. And it's just like, for us, it would be an almost perfect house.
Yeah.
It was space. It needed some work. It was quite dated. It was rented because the parents of one of the couple who kind of ran it had obviously passed away, and it was clean and tidy, and it was cheap, and it was in a fairly good location, not a prime location, but just a good location for us, close to things that, it's kind of just sort of saying, this room being, like the living room being kind of more square rather than long and narrow. And just the difference that can make, and just all those sort of little things you think, would this work for us, and things like that. I can understand that.
The little house that we're renting, now we've got our building work being done. I've never really thought about it, but our house has a south-facing garden, so you get light, all through the day. This one that we're in now is east-west, so we get a lot of sunlight in the morning at the back, and then you get a lot of really bright sunlight in the front later on. But it's like black and white, the difference between the two. It's just extraordinary. I've never lived with it. We've been in our house for 30 odd years, so it's the only place I've ever lived where I've needed to sort of notice that kind of thing. And now, being the other way around, it's quite stark. It's quite remarkable, the difference it makes to you. To your day. Just where I can't. I had to put blackout blinds up in here because this is my little office and I'm editing in here, but I can't edit after a certain time of day because it's just too bright. Can't do it. Can't make color corrections or anything worth a
Everything's washed
damn.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get that. When I do my tutoring, I use the computer behind me for that, and I have different things on different screens depending on what's sort of happening, and the camera is directly kind of in the middle of the middle screen. Well, at the top of it, not directly in the middle, but certainly in winter, the room that I'm in and the angle, the orientation of the house is such that I have to have the blinds closed, even if it's not dark, because the light just comes in and it's just the person that's sort of watching me can't see what they're just seeing a blur, or they're being blinded themselves by the sort of light. So blinds have to come down, and that's for 5 or 6 months of the year. It's just because of just the angle and the latitude we're at.
Yeah, amazing.
It's just yet another reason why sink me into a concrete box underground with full, kind of clean air and ambient lighting control and everything else. Let me control my environment. That's where I'm happy.
Sounds good.
None of this outside air and pollen and Alternate kind of rubbish.
No.
So
what's been grabbing your attention, Jamie?
I've been actually taking a bit of a chill out and relax a little bit this weekend, rather than the usual kind of pushing to get stuff done. So mostly because of all the other weekends around it are very much that. So a little bit of I've been playing a little bit of the new Zelda game. I've been pottering a little bit, a little bit of leatherwork today, but I started watching Foundation the other day. It's been on my list for a long time. It's an adaptation of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, which is a book I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm a couple of episodes in so far and quite liking it.
Which streaming platform would that be on?
Good question. Don't know. Pass.
Google.
Easily findable on your popular search engines. Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
I think it's Apple TV actually.
I will sort that out. Oh, Cuz has just said it's Apple TV. Yeah. Well done, Cuz. We'll forgive you for the earlier.
Stealing my dad joke.
Yeah.
How about you, Andy? What's been grabbing your attention?
It's exam marking season. So apart from Men's Shed, which carrying on with organisation, and we've been doing some rewiring. So we've been fortunate to find a electrician who will let us do, or certainly help with a lot of the rewiring to sort of keep the cost down. So put in a new ring main and sort some of the wiring out. Some of the organisation of tools is just an ongoing thing and will be for a few more months yet. Apart from that, it's been exam marking. So I've finished 6 days early. The first I'm on 2 contracts this year, and I finished the first one 6 days early a couple of days ago. And then I've spent all day today doing the familiarization marking for the second one, which you don't really get paid for, but it's basically going through all the. You get to mark more questions than you'll get delivered for the contract. So you kind of have to go through and kind of go, I've got a query about this thing on the mark scheme, and I think this should be added, and stuff like that. It's a bit time consuming, but it's especially as I was kind of a little bit distracted. I was I've forgotten his name. I will have to post a link to it. I've been following for quite a bit of time on YouTube a professional climber who is Norwegian. His initials are MM, and I can't remember what they stand for. And he just does. He kind of goes to the States sometimes and goes to sort of Venice Beach and gets people doing sort of challenges to hold things or do pull-ups and the like of that, or he disguises himself as an old man and goes to a climbing gym and does
he also had Eddie Hall in to his...
He had Eddie Hall on recently, kind of teaching him to climb.
Is it Marius
Mockberg? Yeah, I think
something like that.
it's a Norwegian letter at the end that makes it difficult to pronounce.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with Norwegian pronunciation. But he did a series of videos where he was kind of attached himself to either the Norwegian Army or sort of American USMC, and kind of sort of just testing things like obstacle courses or unarmed combat. So I had, what I was marking today, I had that kind of on my second screen or third screen, kind of just watching that, and it really quite fascinating, and it's very interesting seeing the particularly the Norwegian army, and just seeing actually how kind of humble and accepting they were, and kind of learning from him. Because there was some climbing stuff. I mean, it was interesting sort of seeing how he coped with some of the stuff, like climbing stuff. Yeah, he far surpasses them in terms of the ability to climb, do pull-ups and the like. But he can't. Yes, he can run. He can run, but comparing, running with 50 kilos of stuff on his back, on rough terrain in boots, very quickly kind of going, I'm extremely tired at this point, or words to that effect. It's just fascinating. Just fascinating to see and to sort of watch. It's entertaining, but it's good.
I like those kind of crossover things where you, like we've talked about before, with things like Strength Wars or things like that, where you have someone who's very, very practiced at one type of physical or
extremely
physicality.
Strong, extremely fit guy, but he doesn't do running.
So then, and that was the same with when Eddie was in his climbing gym. Kind of Eddie showing him some of the strongman stuff, and even shifting the weight scales down to kind of comparatively for his. Seeing very well practiced athletes doing something that someone else is very well practiced at is a good kind of eye opener to say, look, it's the great leveler, isn't it? Of the same way we have woodworkers aren't necessarily great at metalwork or whatever else. The kind of humbling and reminder that just because you see one person being better than you at something, it doesn't mean they're better than you at everything.
No, very true.
So that was definitely an interesting watch, and just seeing kind of tier one operators in the forces, and kind of dealing with essentially a tier one professional athlete, and how they kind of the swap overs and just an enjoyable watch.
Sounds it.
I will again, as always, I will link that to the in the show notes.
Nice. Lovely jubbly.
Peter, where can people find you?
I'm just always hanging around, turning up like a bad penny. You can find me at 10 Minute Workshop pretty much everywhere. At 10 Minute Workshop on YouTube, at 10 Minute Workshop on Instagram, at 10 Minute Shop on Twitter, because 15 character maximum. 10minuteworkshop.com is the website, and 10minuteworkshop.plus is the member platform. But otherwise, just generally around. Always happy to talk.
Excellent. Right. Well, we'll say goodbye to the YouTube listeners for now, and
lovely.
In a few moments, we'll say hello to the Patreon listeners.
Indeed.
Lovely. Yeah. Okay. Nice talking to you. Bye.
Cheers, folks. This is where we get the 20-second switch over.